We're going to have the presentation brought up too. There we go. All right. Well, thank you. This is, we're going to be talking about business success, the five ingredients in the secret sauce. And it's really a subtitle, What I Learned as a 25-year professional angel investor. In fact, I've been doing it now for 28 years. But this whole thing started was I was in a Bible study at the Atlanta Technology Village, which is an incubator for dozens of technology startups here in the Atlanta area in the United States. And we have this weekly Bible study that we have at on Thursdays over lunch. And as we were leaving there, you can imagine there was probably 30 entrepreneurs that were involved. And one of them grabbed me in the hallway. I still remember where I was standing. And he said to me, he said, so what, I want to start my own company. He says, I'm having trouble understanding what are the elements of success? I mean, what do I need to have in my startup so that I know I can not only start it, but that I'll be successful doing it? And I remember answering him, and it just sort of came out. And this is like recently, I'm talking about 4 years ago that this came up. And it's funny how life works. You could be doing something. I'm doing something all my life, investing in these startups, and not really coming up with a checklist, if you will. But just this fellow, he asked me this question, and I came up with these 5 ingredients for the successful startup. So so where did they actually come from? If you go to the next slide, we got the next slide. Thank you. This is where they really came from. So I've been doing professional angel investing really since I'm 40 years old. This is now 28 years that I've been doing talking to entrepreneurs. So I have invested in 35 very early stage companies. I'm known as somebody who invests in sort of 2 entrepreneurs and a napkin-based idea. So I get them before they even incorporate as a business anywhere. And I've done that all my life. And so I've talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs during this time and learned from them how they think, how they start businesses, and how they grow these businesses. I've been fortunate enough to choose some winners and wound up with multiple 20 time returns, meaning I put $1 in and get more than $20 back in that case. We've built values of in excess of $75 million of values in companies that we started from scratch. And today, for the last 2 years, I've been interviewing entrepreneurs on my show called the Charlie Paparelli Show at paparelli.com. And you're able to see those interviews because I always think that the real secrets of success come from the stories of these entrepreneurs. So I distilled these 5 elements. If you could advance the slide. So here are the 5 elements of success that I found in business. And it really checked out for me as I looked back at the people that I've talked to, the investments that I've made, and I look around at the investments I currently have and the businesses that I see that are successful in and around the Atlanta area and also around the world. And these 5 are pretty simple. The first element of a successful business is that they clearly identify a problem in the market, that they understand a problem they're trying to solve. And the second thing is then to solve it, to come up with a solution. Thirdly is to identify, again, clearly who owns the problem. So who should I be talking to? And then fourth, will they pay to solve the problem? And if they will, how much? We all have problems in our life that we're not willing to pay to solve because we just sort of live with them. But there are problems that people will, and we are those people that would step in and actually pay money to solve it. And then once I understand how much someone will pay to solve it, is there an economic model that makes sense? In other words, if I build this product, if I reach out and find these people and spend that marketing money, if I then install the product and then I support that product or that service, you know, can I make money doing it? Because if I can't make money doing it, I'm not going to be around. So to be sustainable, I need to make money doing it. So how much they're willing to pay and what I'm going to have to do to get that money to solve their problem is critical to the success of any business. So let's delve a little deeper into this. The first one is the problem in the market. You know, one of the things that I see is that the problems when I've talked to entrepreneurs is I always ask the question, so they always want to tell me about their idea. That's the first thing that they come up. And we think that the entrepreneurs generally think ideas are where the value is. The real value or future value of a company is in the problem that the company solves, the problem that the entrepreneur solves. So I ask the question, so what's the problem in the marketplace that you address? And it's very interesting when someone tells me the problem that they address, I know immediately if this is something that's going to if this is going to be a business or not be a business. And what I mean by that is the problem definition has to be actually intuitive. You know, it's something that I hear it and I go, yeah, that's a problem. And I have a business that I'm going to use here. It's a friend of mine named Jim Grady, who's also a serial entrepreneur. I've known Jim for 30 years now, and he's built some great companies. And the company that he's most recently working on is a company called Hello Package. And Jim had joined an incubator. It was really called an accelerator here in town as a part of Georgia Tech to sharpen his focus on this problem and his solution and to answer these 5 questions that we have. And so Jim created a company called Hello Package. And I remember Jim getting up at graduation from the accelerator and he had to give his 6-minute presentation. And he started out with the problem that he solves. And the problem that he identified, he said, you know, e-commerce is expanding at an ever increasing rate. We see this in Amazon, how quickly that they're grown from year to year to year. They're taking a larger and larger share of purchases from retail stores, the brick and mortar type retail stores. And I said, yeah, that's true. He says, and you've probably been ordering a lot of things online. I said, yeah, well, more and more of the products that I do order online. That's how I buy them now. He says, well, that's not a problem for you because they get sent to your house. But what if you lived in multifamily housing? What if you are one of 300 or 500 apartment dwellers? Can you imagine 500 of your fellow residents are ordering products just like you order them online? What does it look like at the front door of that particular building? And I went, wow, that's a big problem. I don't know how they solve that problem now. And he says, and you know, it's getting bigger and bigger each and every day. So he identified a problem that immediately brought the audience in because we got it. We do it. We're part of it. We understand it. And for multifamily housing, it's a big problem. So then he moved to the solution. Let's go to that. So with the problem identified, I now have to, as an entrepreneur, okay, or a business owner, I need to say, so what's my solution to this problem? And this is where entrepreneurs really need to start. A lot of entrepreneurs start with an idea for a really cool product. And generally speaking, I see a lot over the last 28 years, I've seen a lot of products in search of a problem to solve. And that just means burning a lot of money. So what's really important is to focus your solution on a problem that you've already identified. And that's where the money is to be made. That's the beginning. And what Jim did with Hello Package is he put together a solution of hardware, combination hardware, which is shelves, and software, which directs people to sort of that deliver product and all deliver to these residents, and also for residents to be told you do have a package and you should come in and pick it up and help them find that package. So I said, wow, that sounds like a difficult solution. It seems pretty complex, Jim. I said, is there a place that I can go see it? And I went to one of his, what he calls a package room in one of these apartment complexes where there are approximately 300 residents, 300 different apartments. And I sat in that room as a potential investor and just watched what was happening, how his solution worked. And I watched the delivery people come in, people like Federal Express and United Parcel Services and the U.S. Mail and several other freeform sort of delivery services that came in, delivering packages that were ordered by all of these residents. And I watched these guys stumble around trying to figure out how to match a package to a unit and how to where they're going to put it on a shelves. I've seen the different sizes of packages, from ordering a mattress to ordering a television to ordering, a diamond ring, okay, which might be very, very small. So you have all these different sizes. And then I saw the residents who were notified that they have a package come in, and then look around and say, well, where's my package and all this? And I saw all kinds of problems. I saw security problems of entering the room. I saw security problems of residents coming in and picking up the wrong package. I saw that they couldn't find packages. I saw the delivery guys were confused. I remember walking out of there and Jim calling me, said, well, what did you think? And I said, I think it's good you're solving this problem because it almost blew my head up. It's so complex what you're trying to solve here. I said, however, if you do solve it, you've got something. And so he said, what we do is we just go one by one as we see the problems come up in our solution, and we knock them out and knock them out. And he did it over the years. Now, the next issue, which is who actually has the problem. And this is very important in any company. You need to know who owns the problem so that you know who to talk to. When you go to a company, or if you go to a household even, you might identify a problem that the household has, but if you're talking to, let's say, the child say, well, that's what mom does. Okay. If you're talking to a business owner says, well, that's not my problem. Somebody else in here has that problem. It's your job as the entrepreneur. It's your job as the business owner to figure out who has the problem, who owns it. Companies and households, as I said, consumers, they have lots of problems, but you got to find the person who is saddled with it. They have to deal with it. And then the hello package example that I gave, I was just over there visiting with Jim, and this is why it's so fresh in my mind that I was talking about him, is I was talking to a sales manager, and his sales manager said to me, when I make calls, and this is where it always lands, trying to figure out who owns the problem is really a sales issue. You got to know who to call. So the sales manager said to me, it's sometimes the person who owns this problem of all of these packages come in, the distribution to residents, it's the leasing agent that's on site who owns the problem. Sometimes I have to talk to the owner of the apartment complex. They actually believe they own the problem because they want to provide a good service to their residents. And then sometimes it might be if an apartment owner owns multiple apartment buildings, he could have a person who's their vice president of operations who would own that customer satisfaction or resident satisfaction and the operational parts that contribute to that level of satisfaction for those residents. So I said, well, who is it? He says, well, we're still trying to figure that out. They've been in business for 4 years, and he's still trying to figure out who's the best person to call given a a type of an apartment complex and how they might be organized, but he has to crack who owns the problem. Then he went to the fourth issue. When he finally went to somebody who owned the problem, he said, how big of a problem is it? Oh, it's a really big problem. Well, how much are you willing to pay to solve that problem? And I remember when he talked to some people who were early on, that had maybe just one apartment complex that they owned. He talked to the owner, and the owner said, it's not really that big of a problem. We kind of just have the leasing agent sort of distribute the packages because we don't have a lot of people that are ordering online. Well, the person he was talking to was somebody in what's called Section 8 housing, which is low income housing. So, of course, most of those guys, they didn't even have internet and they didn't order online. They were on welfare in a lot of cases. But he did eventually find somebody. And what he found out is that they were already solving the problem, this person that had it. And they were solving the problem using a solution, the first level of solution, or solution level 1.0, as I'll call it, a solution called lockers. Okay, so they were trying, the problem that units were having was twofold. Way back before e-commerce started to explode. One was, as products started to get delivered that people ordered, residents ordered. One was they were having packages stolen. So there were security issues that need to be solved. And the second one was just notifying residents that they did have a product, that they did have their package did arrive. And so this concept of this first level of solution of lockers came into play. And they look like your lockers from your high school, literally. So a delivery man comes in, he scans, he looks at where the resident is, a little keypad, assigns the package to that particular resident. A locker opens, he puts the package in there and locks the door. And then the resident gets notified and comes in and picks it up. Very simple solution. But now the solution is being overwhelmed because people are ordering at such high frequency rates. The lockers get filled quickly. There's packages all over the floor. And so this gets down to how much will you pay? And the answer was, I'll pay what I'm already paying for the lockers. I'll pay you because you have a superior solution. So that's how he came up with the product. So then he had to figure out, can I make money doing this? I was listening to a podcast a while back, and one of the Koch brothers, that's Koch. These are they were two brothers who created a huge conglomerate. These men are out of Kansas City, Kansas, and they created this multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. And I remember one of the Koch brothers was asked, what is it that you do? He says, we invest in businesses that make people's lives better, and we make a profit doing it. And we have to make their lives better. That's the one criteria. And the other is we have to make money doing it. If either one of those isn't there, then we sell off the business. And that is the center of, that's a great definition of capitalism. That's what we're about. We're in business to make people's lives better and to make money doing it so that we can then be sustainable and that we can live. And so it's important as a startup to have an economic model that works, something that you can make money at. I have to build the product. I have to support the product. I have to get salespeople who are going to market the product and sell it to people. I have to be able to sell them their commissions and incent them properly. I have to have people that support the product. I put all of that information, and if you go to the next slide, I put all that information into a spreadsheet and say, does this make sense? Do I have a business here, or do I have a nonprofit? And if I have a business, you'll see at the bottom line, what will happen is it shows that we have a profit. And I say, I have something. So these are, in fact, the 5 elements, okay? If we can jump to the next slide. These are the 5 elements of a successful business. Jim Grady and his product called, and his company called Hello Package, which by the way, you could look up online as hellopackage.com. He has each of these five elements. First, the problem in the market, which is the explosion of e-commerce. I'll tell you something about this. I talked to Jim just recently, and he told me it took him 3 years to truly understand the problem in the marketplace. 3 years. And I find that that is true in every single startup that I've ever invested in. It takes that long to understand the nuances of the problem, to come up with a solution that is unique to solve those nuanced problems. Okay. Understand who owns the problem so I know who to call on, and then who will pay and how much they will pay, and to come to a model that actually works. Of all of these five elements of success, the problem in the market, is the most important. Every startup, every entrepreneur that I know that's been successful has focused on the problem. And the more they get into the problem, the whole organization follows them in, and they understand at a gut level what's going on for the people that they're trying to serve and whose lives they're trying to make better. But you still have to have the other five. But there's one more, and I call it the secret sauce. And the secret sauce is you. And this is something that I had to learn the hard way. You see, I had started as an entrepreneur in my early 20s. We actually wrote and sold software to CPA offices. That's chartered accountants, I think is what you call them in Europe. And it was first time automation for these people. And we built a successful company. We became the biggest in the United States, and we wound up selling. And at 28 years old, this son of a father who worked on the train systems in New Jersey, okay, who never made more than $28,000 a year, we sold this business and I became a millionaire. I didn't even know what $1 million was, but I knew this: once the money came in, I wanted more of it. And the money actually just accelerated who I was at the time. Well, I worked for this corporation that we had sold to. I worked for the corporation for 10 years because I wanted to learn how to become a professional manager, how to become a leader of large scale organizations. And I did that. But eventually I just got burned out, and I said, I just miss being with entrepreneurs. I really felt like that was where I was supposed to be. That's where the fun was, not in corporations. And so I started a business with this young lady who was my partner, and she was a branch manager for one of the businesses that I was running while I was with the corporation. So we came together, we started this business. It was a services business. I had about $125,000 invested in that business. We were sitting in sublet offices, no windows, because we didn't have any money to get nice offices. And we're getting this business out of the ground. We're in it about 6 months. And she comes into my office one morning and she says, I quit. And I said, you quit? Why do you quit? We're just getting out of the ground. It's starting to work. She said, I can't work for you. You're impossible. You're like a slave driver. You kind of run this business on fear, like we're going to go out of business any moment. She goes, it's not fun being here. It's causing too much stress for me, which is causing stress in my marriage. It's not worth it to me. And she turned around and she walked out the door. Her name was Claudine. And I'll never forget that, because I sat there and I said, she can't work for me. I don't even like working for me. So who am I? What am I doing? I'm just so focused on business, I'm forgetting what I am and what I'm about. It was shortly after that my wife and I had just finished dinner, and we had a bottle of wine with dinner, and she drank a glass and I drank the rest of the bottle. And then I sat down in the living room and I was drinking beer while watching a baseball game. And I came to realize that all of the bedroom doors in the house were closed. My wife was in our bedroom with the door closed, and my daughters, at the time I had two daughters and a son, now I have four children, their bedroom doors were all closed. And I said, you finally did it. You become your father. You see, my father was a heavy drinker, which is what I turned out to be. And when he drank, he was unpredictable. I didn't know if he was going to love me or if he was going to pick on me or emotionally abuse me or strike out at me even. And so what I did was I learned to stay away from him when he was drinking. And I realized that I became my father. My wife and my children were staying away from me when they saw me drinking. And it broke my heart. And I remember at the time, I had this very clear vision that said, if you keep doing what you're doing, the way you're doing it, you're going to lose your career and you're going to lose your family. And I just saw what that would look like. And it just scared me. Like the hairs on my neck went up and I really almost shivered. And so I said, I need to do something about this. You know, I had this financial success, yet it was combined with this personal disaster, these flaws that I had within me. So I called I called a neighbor from an old neighborhood that I lived in. And he was a business, he was a leader and manager in a big business. And I had heard that he went to a recovery program for alcoholism. So I called him up and his name was Jim. I said, Jim, would you be willing to meet with me to talk about your recovery program, the alcohol problems that you had? And he met with me that very same day, very quickly. He started telling me his story and I was listening to his story. It was awful. And I was thinking, could that actually happen to me? And there was a voice in the back of my head that said, yeah, and you're not far from it. So he invited me to go to an AA meeting that day, an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, which I believe you also have in Europe. And I went to it and I put on my best suit and I sat in the back of the room with my head down because I didn't want anybody to recognize me, that because I didn't really think that I was like these people. And when the meeting ended, there was a man that stood up and he was a man who painted houses and he still had his white outfit on with paint stains all over it. And he pointed to me at the back of the room. And I want to tell you, I've been to hundreds of these Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and I was shocked what this man did. He pointed to me in the back of the room and he said, I don't know why you're here or what you're trying to achieve by being here, but if you want to stop drinking one day at a time, you'll come up here and you'll get this white chip, which is the international sign of surrender. And you will stop drinking one day at a time. And secondly, when you wake up in the morning, you will hit your knees and you will pray to God to keep you sober. And every night you will hit your knees and pray to God and thank him for keeping you sober. And as I looked back on that man, he changed my life. He gave me permission to do the two things that I wanted to do in life that I felt incapable of doing. One was to stop drinking one day at a time, because every morning I woke up prior to that and said, I'm not going to drink. And every night at 5 o'clock, I was drinking again. And the second thing that he gave me is he gave me permission to talk to God. I had when I reviewed my life, I looked at it and saw that I would drink and then I would make bad decisions, things I would do that would create in me great guilt. So the next day I would wake up and I would feel guilty. And because I felt guilty, I would have a drink to kind of take the edge off. And then that would start more bad decisions. And I got worse and worse and worse and worse. And this is how I knew if I stayed on this track, I was going to lose everything, career, all the way through to my wife and my children. One time in one of those meetings, there was somebody who came up with a discussion question called, who's your higher power? You see, in Alcoholics Anonymous, you give this problem of alcoholism that you have. I gave it to God. I just gave it to him. I said, you're God, I'm not, you take it. And I realized these people were talking and they said, my higher power is the people in this room, or my higher power is the blue book of Alcoholics Anonymous, or the higher power is my sponsor. And I said, you know better than that. There's this God who took away this desire for you to drink, created this miracle in your life, Charlie. Who is this God? Within, it seemed, days, people came out of the woodwork and invited me to sessions like this, to have a businessman just like me who told his story of his success in business, but also his success in life and the secret to that. And so that's what I heard. And what happened was, if we can go back to this, go back to the previous two slides. Yeah, previous slide. Thank you. And what happened was the man who told his story, previous slide, thank you, said his name was Adolf Coors IV. And Adolf Coors was of the Coors lineage, who has the Coors Brewery. So here's the man with all the beer in the world talking to somebody who wanted all the beer in the world. And he said that my father was my God and my father was killed and I almost lost my own life because my God went away. And he asked the question, who are you leading your ladder in life against? And so that's when he said, you know, Jesus came to die for your sins. And you're holding on to this guilt that you have, and you're holding on this life that you're trying to work your way through and to make right, and you're failing at it. Why don't you just give your life to Christ and allow him to lead you and to make you a new man and have that old man go away? And I made that decision at that time to do that. So I said, I'm going to trust God. He took away this desire to drink from me. It started with the AA program and then through the 12 steps, but it was completed in this spiritual transformation that they talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I actually became born again. And that was the beginning of my investing career. Okay. If we could skip here, it's interesting. I've used these 5 elements of success and say, you know, the greatest entrepreneur that ever lived still lives today, and his name is Jesus Christ. He used these same very 5 elements that we talked about. One is, what's the problem? The problem is that he saw that needed to be solved was the human condition. We know what we should do, but we don't do it. The solution that we have is to just try harder, be a better person. And his solution was, I'm going to come and die for you so that you can believe in me and your sins will be forgiven. Who owned the problem? I clearly did. Well, what was I willing to pay? I was either willing to pay my life, which was going to be a ruined life, or I was going to give my life to him, which I did. I wound up with a sustainable economic model. And that was, as I said, the beginning of my investment career at 40. I'm so grateful for what he did in my life, how he saved my wife, how he saved our marriage. Our marriage became born again. He saved my children, and now this next generation, my grandchildren. And he gave me this highly influential career called professional investing, which has been, I've touched so many people and so many lives and have such great relationships. My mission is to help entrepreneurs achieve their dream of starting and owning their own company. I can only do this because God showed me what it means to live his dream for my life. That's been the amazing part. So you are special. Think of the businesses that you buy from. The secret sauce that brings you back is the owner and the leader in that business. The secret sauce in your business is you. You are the competitive advantage. You cannot be duplicated. You are the leader. You are the culture. You are special. You are the secret sauce in your business on top of those 5 elements of success. The question I ask you is, so who are you? Thanks for your time.
I have one question here in the chat for you, Charlie. which is pretty interesting. What is the most important skill a successful entrepreneur needs? What could you tell us about that?
I think the most successful skill, that's interesting, a skill. I think it's timing, okay? And what I mean by that is when I talk to entrepreneurs, I try to understand the arc of their life. What's going on in their life from childhood on? And then I look at the arc of business and what's going on in society. And if there is an integration, okay, a crossing of the this person at this time with these skills and this problem that's out there in the marketplace that they're drawn to, if I see that intersection, then I say, this is something that's going to work. This is someone who cannot release this problem. You know, the hardest thing about entrepreneur is there's so many barriers that we run into. But if you feel like you've been chosen, okay, if you believe in God, you're chosen by God to solve this problem, or you just think it's some sort of a supernatural universe event that you're here at this time, no matter what, your life is dedicated to it and you can never release it. So it's that persistence that comes from being in the right place at the right time.
Thank you, Charlie. I have my personal question. At the beginning of your speech, you said when somebody comes to you that you immediately recognize if it will or will not be a business. What is that secret? How you recognize it so fast?
The thing is, because they're able to articulate a problem which is intuitive. It's just intuitive. You hear it and you go, that's a big problem. And as soon as you understand, like sort of in your gut or heart of hearts that it's a big problem, I start immediately thinking, well, who has the problem? You know, what is it worth to solve that problem? Is this person capable of solving that problem, coming up with a good solution? So it immediately becomes the beginnings of a business. That's what I see.
Thank you, Charlie. I see a question from Vladia Obršík. Vladio, could you ask your question yourself? And if you can unmute Vladia so he can ask his question.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, hello. I just want to ask you a question. How do you deal with business that God leads you to, and maybe it doesn't make sense to other people? You know, maybe it does make sense to God and to you, but not to other people. So it's not maybe so connected to the solving of the problem, but it's more like God leads you to that, and it doesn't make sense to other people. How do you deal with that?
What do you mean it doesn't make sense to other people?
I mean,
I asked that question because if it doesn't make sense to other people, why does it make sense to me?
No, because maybe God leads you to that business, you know, but it's, I mean, if it's like business more about faith and trust in God than about maybe solving problems, you know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah,
God
I guess I do understand what you mean. I think, and hopefully this answers your question. Okay, but you know, the God that we serve is an ordered God. Okay, I always look to Genesis 1, where you see the creation of the world and the universe. It's a very step by step, system by system that gets built. Each system is self-sustaining, and each system sustains from the system that was put in place before it. So there is a logic to it. So to go blindly and say, well, God just told me to do this, so I think we should do this. I don't know that that person is being talked to by God. I don't know that that person knows. But if it doesn't have that logic and that order to it, it's not something that is God-like that will work. That's my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have there a critical question. What has been the biggest change or biggest difference Jesus has made in your life as a businessman when you reborn?
Yeah, I think that what the biggest change that has been that I've recognized in my life, is that the question?
Yeah, what was the biggest difference in your life before you came to know Jesus and afterwards?
Oh, okay. Before I knew Jesus, I was about success. I was about just chasing, I would say chasing the money, if you will. And I gotten pretty good at having a facade that I cared about people. But really, I was in essence, when I look back, using people to get me to my end of making more money. Okay. And that's where Claudine sort of put this in my face. She said, I can't work for you. This isn't working for me. And I was like, how can it not? I'm thinking to myself, if it's not working if it works for me, why wouldn't it work for you? I didn't care about her. And what I found is God's put that check in my heart, and God said, he put a mirror up and he said, look at who you are. Look at who you've become over 39 years here in your life. And that, when I finally gave up on me and gave myself to him, then I had true purpose in my life. I was on his purpose, not my purpose. And what he did with that is he built a brand and reputation here in the Atlanta area, which I would never dream that I would have. He built a marriage that I have that I never dreamed I would have, and a relationship with my children that is just incredible. I mean, it's been a big difference. There is this 2 Corinthians 5:17 verse that says, I'm a new man in Christ. The new has come and the old is gone. And boy, I have lived that. And looking back from 68 to 40 when I came to Christ, I can tell you it's for real. I didn't believe it at first, but I believe it now. You're on mute. You're on mute, Jan.
Thank you. Well, we have a great comment from Iris. So if we can unmute Iris, so Iris can tell us her comment and her question.
Thank you. Hi. So I am responding to the question before this one because I resonated with it too. In fact, when you spoke about knowing the problem and who owns the problem, are they willing to pay it? That comment was exactly what was going in my mind. Sometimes, at the place society is at, the system is at, people don't actually see something as a problem. Like people didn't see that they only had horses as a problem until they had cars.
Right.
So in education, for me, a problem as a teacher is that students usually get to high school and most of them have lost the joy of learning and taking ownership and responsibility for learning. Even the ones who are diligent and will get the straight A's and will do what you want. And I've solved that problem with students one-on-one in tutoring and in the classroom when I had, but I'm interested in it, being solved more broadly or in how I market now that I'm about to market privately and not working just for companies. But for many parents and even many teachers in elite schools, I've worked in elite schools, they don't see that as an issue. Like the kids do as I'm told, like they have to learn, they don't see the fact that the kids don't have that inherent joy that a 3-year-old has and that ability to drive and take ownership for their learning. Mm. Many people don't see that as a problem. I think if you explain it well, some might, but at the moment, many people are not even bothered with that. They just, as long as the kids do what they're told.
Right. I think part of, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, I just wanted to check if it made sense.
No, it does make sense. But this is one of those that we can sit back and say, the problem is that children don't seem to have an interest in learning like they did that natural interest that they had when they were 3 years old, right? That they were sponges. Whatever came in front of them, they just want more and more. They weren't afraid to fail. There was all these things, right?
Okay.
Right?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Now what happens is we get to be adults and you define the problem as they're not interested in learning. Well, is that really the problem, or is that really the symptom that reflects?
It's a symptom.
The problem?
Yes, it's a symptom.
It's a
right.
symptom.
Symptom. So that's true.
So you got to dig and dig and dig. Now, one part of it, I'm not an expert. My daughter is her career is teaching, one of my daughters. But what happens is we've institutionalized learning, right? And for a 3-year-old, 3-year-olds don't have that. They just sort of, you put some things in the middle of a room, you sit the 3-year-old down and they do what they do, but now we've institutionalized it and have for years, hoping that they'll come out the other side and they'll be employable, that they can add to society. There's something missing in all that. I don't know what the problem is because I don't think deeply enough about it, but I'll tell you, somebody is going to crack the code and solve the problem because they got to get to defining it clearly. We haven't gotten there yet. We just blame the institutions. That's how we do it now. I said, oh yeah, they're terrible schools, or too many kids, and the teacher or the children, the pupil to the student, student to teacher ratio is the problem. Or so we have all this hit and miss going on. But what really is it? Who's thinking deeply about it? Institutions don't do that well.
Cool. Thank you. This is very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Charlie, you have 2 last questions. And one is connected with the people too and with the family. So I will ask that first. The question is from Marcella. How did you start to rebuild the relationships with wife and children?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. It's a good question. It was, what I did is I just started in the morning. I had a mentor at the time. I said, listen, when you get up in the morning, I want you to read the Bible and I want you to pray for your relationship with Jesus. And I want you to pray for your family. I want you to pray for your wife. I want you to pray for your marriage. And I want you to pray for your children. And he said to me, if you're not praying for them, who is? And so I didn't become this sort of, I found Jesus, you need to see Jesus. I didn't push all that on my family. I said, I just need to work on my personal relationship. And then little by little, there was one time when, and I started going to church. This happened about 6 months after coming to Christ. I started going to church on a Sunday morning at an 8 a.m. service. After about 3 weeks, my wife said to me, can we go to church with you? And I said, okay. So we started going to church. Okay. My son would wake up in the morning, who at the time was 3, go back to Iris here, was 3, who would see his father praying and reading the Bible in the morning. And he would come into my office and he would lay on me and we would have this just quiet time together, just not even speaking, but just being together. And little by little, this bonding took place. Little by little, this God used what he's doing in my life and he transferred that into my family. I became a different husband. I became a different father. Now I have 4 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys, and they were born in that order. The 2 girls grew up with a father who drank, who traveled for business all the time, was home very infrequently, but who was very successful. The 2 boys grew up with a father who never drank, who they saw pray and read the Bible, and who never traveled. Those 2 relationships, the boys and the girls, were so different over the years. The girls took years to trust me that I was for real, but the boys were close to me right from the beginning because they didn't know any different. Now I'm close to all of my children, but it took 10 to 15 years for my daughters to come around and actually trust me that this is the man that I actually was. It was interesting. It's a great question.
Thank you, Charlie. It was very, very deep and strong for us. Let's go for the last question, a little bit back to the business. There's a beautiful question. What motivates you the most in business and why?
At this point in my life, it happened when I decided, I told you my mission in life is to help entrepreneurs achieve their dream, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And what motivates me most is to encourage these would-be entrepreneurs. Many of them were just like me at 35 years old. They've got a lot of industry knowledge. They've got a lot of relationships. They know customers. They potential employees, is to say, what's going on in their life? And they say, well, I just don't like working in this company anymore. I know that there's a better way, whatever. And I love to encourage them to step out into that void that they're so fearful of. And once they step out, I've seen such wonderful things happen. They struggle, but it becomes step one, step two. Before you know it, it goes from a crawl to a walk to a run. And to see that confidence change, to see them running their own business, to see their imprint on the culture, to create the culture in their organization that changes people's lives, to build organizations that serve others, and the fulfillment that comes from that. That's what motivates me, helping them do that.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Thank you. We are so happy we could have you here. After all these questions in your speech, would you have anything to tell us as a sending before we will split into our national groups?
Yeah, I would leave you with two personal questions. So these aren't like group questions. These are questions that you kind of think about, I would say, when you're in your quiet time, when you're taking your walk around your neighborhood, around your city or whatever. Are you someone you would do business with? All right. That's the first one. And secondly, do you truly, I'm going to go back to Iris, do you truly understand the problem you aim to solve? Or are you just talking about it like everyone else talks about it? Do you truly understand the problem you aim to solve? But more importantly, again, going back to you, are you the person? Are you someone that you would do business with? So I'll leave you with that. All right.
Thank you, Charlie.